Okay, so let me just state to you guys why, from this point, and presenting a timeline of sexual abuses and assaults that went on since 1985, I could take you through a series of stories, and I could take you through a series of assaults that have occurred. And also, there's physical evidence. You don't actually need physical evidence to prove that there was a rape. You can look at past injuries. You can look at some of the other night terrors. You can have it. We have. It's well documented, by the way. So, for a victim not to be able to come forward about assaults, it's, to me, it's irrelevant whether the victim comes forward or not. They can, in fact, argue cases, because in therapy, things come out in therapy, uh, and they can document and they can research it, and they can have expert researchers and experts look at this evidence and go through it and find evidence everywhere that all of us have been led into this or led through something. And it's very relevant because at some point or another, when the victims state who their abusers are and they can pick them out in a lineup, that's that's when you'll start seeing results. The abusers understand their victims pretty well. You can tell. They could try to frame a victim. They could try to frame. The bottom line is the victims, the ones that didn't see it coming, the ones that have their back turned, are not looking the other way. That's why something my dad stated a long time ago: you have to have 1,000 eyes. There is no reason for anyone to go out with somebody and then come home with all these injuries. The whole point of going out on a date night, and I'm going to hashtag date night, hashtag the wave, is that there's been a wave of rapes and assaults that have occurred over here, including other victims, in which it's obvious when I say this, every case is separate. When it comes down to the one specific topic, when we talk about the topics like the Cherry Mahan case, this is very relevant to anyone who's listened to that case nationwide. It's the cases that go unreported. It's the ones that haven't been reported correctly. And that's when you get into the kind of the nit and gritty of the details of the stories. And when I say that not all abusers are out to rape and murder, I find that hard to believe. Eventually, when it comes to pornography and child pornography, the crime always gets worse. That's why exposing it is it's very relevant to argue that child pornography and pornography only gets worse over time. Because look at the series of rapes that have occurred. Um, why we are just addressing it? Why? Because we know it happens in the dark of night. We know that these things happen when someone's not looking. We know that the whole reason there's raids is to expose it to begin with. And the reason that most of these families can't go forward is because it's very real. It's a very real experience for somebody who has not had a stable home after being raped. It's very destabilizing to rape somebody and leave them on the highway. It's very relevant when we have documented it, and we have tried to go to the police in 1999. We've tried to talk to the law enforcement about this, and to lead us back here, to be led back. And my dad ended up having a heart attack in 2000, and there were people blaming me. Again, it goes back to not blaming the victims. Everybody's going on vacation, as you can tell. There's no time to talk to the victims, though. And and pointing fingers at the wrong people again. Again, this has been going on for a while. So we're well aware that when they disappear and they just do their own thing, they have to get to the point that they're sick and tired of being abused. They have to get to the point that we got to get outspoken. They have to get to the point where they're angry and they want to fight back. There are some victims who have adopted some view that somehow you have to tolerate abuse. There are victims that think this way, that somehow that this is a way of life, and it is not. Surviving an assault is one thing. Tolerating abuse is another. And believe me, there are neighbors and there are people all around us who've probably at some point looked the other way or said, I can't believe I just saw that. Or I saw something. And victims and detectives and police officers, there's plenty of forensic evidence out there that proves an assault We can sit here. I can tell you all day long how many times I've encountered where victims have been confronted with some very hard questions, like, how am I going to get out of this? How am I going to get out of this situation? By talking about it, it draws, first of all, it's like pus. It's like drawing out the pus. And the sick part of the abuse that goes on is that it's poison. It's poison for all of us to even consider participating with anyone who is going to either have a plan or figure out how they're going to abuse their victim. To me, that is the sickness when we're talking about how deeply sick. I mean, we don't know how dark and ugly somebody is until you look in the eyes of an absolute maniac who is absolutely sexually assaulted or abused a family, including strangling and convincing the victims that somehow it's their fault. And the porn is part of the problem, a big part of the problem. Most of the time, people don't even talk about porn because they don't want to let go of their sick addiction. And also, there are several incidents where throwing somebody off because it's a conflict of interest. This is the topics that you need to talk about. You need to hear. I've heard this from therapists. It's a conflict of interest. What, to defend the rape victims? We're here. We're looking at what's going on. You don't have to be a therapist to figure out what's going on. And you don't have to have a law enforcement. You don't have to have a law enforcement degree. You don't have to have a criminal background or criminal history to understand when you're dealing with a menace and a murderer. And also, yeah, he is that bad. Yeah. When these people defend the rapists and abusers, when they defend the abusers, they can think again. Because those people are responsible for sexually abusing me and my family. And there will come a day that all of them will be held accountable. It may not be now. There's going to come a day. And everyone who assaulted my family and everyone associated with assaulting my family, there will be a day. We will have our day in court. We will have our day in court. Thank you for listening to my broadcast. Because actually...